Okay, and we're back again. And today, my guest is Antony Webb. And Antony is a writer, director, filmmaker, call it what you will. He is a creative, artistic person who has, is it just released Carmentis? Is that just released?
Just released within the last year. Kind of started hitting festivals in April.
In April, okay.
Yeah, we had our cast and crew premiere about December last year. But yeah.
Okay. So how did that come about? Can you tell us a bit about how, or would you like to go back? Would you like to go back a bit further and talk
Far
about
back do you want to go?
how? Yeah.
Right back to uni if you want.
Yeah. Well, okay. While we're on it, let's go back to the days of the pit and fix. And for those people who are watching and listening, these are really, really early creative pursuits that we were both involved in a long time ago. But when you were doing that, was there something in you that said, this is what I want to do, I'm going to make something out of this. And what was the road like getting from there to here?
Road was long and varied and bumpy. The fix for us was obviously our final year uni film for me and Zach that you obviously were starring in. Not a big part. The villain, you were the villain in it.
Yeah, yeah, the bad guy. I got so many roles as bad guys after that.
We loved you as the bad guy. That's going back like 19, 20 years now. But then back then I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know what I was doing, what I wanted to do really. Like I came out of high school. I had enough, high enough grades to get into uni. Didn't know what I wanted to do at uni. It was actually my brother who said, well, you love movies. Why don't you try looking at doing that? So that first year was kind of like really testing the waters of what I wanted to do and playing around with stuff. Did not have the confidence to write and direct at that point. Like was really super low confidence, quiet kind of guy back then, and hooked up with Zach, and then started kind of making these projects together. The second one was Fixed, which is our third year film, and then we kind of just graduated, and there wasn't really an industry to graduate into, so it became more of like, let's just do stuff, because it was like, well, what next kind of idea.
Yeah.
We both went back and did an honors year, which thank God we did, because it just gave us that extra year of like training. But before that, we were just searching for ways to get into the industry, and we didn't really know the local industry. We didn't really know, back then it was FTI and it was Screen West, and we didn't really know about those entities yet. We were just so green. So we kind of came out and made The Pit, which was a Tropfest entry, which did not get very far in Tropfest.
Yeah, I remember that. It was just, and I think the theme though for Tropfest was rock or something, and that was me stepping on a rock in the beginning of the film.
Opening shot was a rock, and then he just destroyed the rock. And we thought, being young kids, were like, that's so cool and thematic, and we're just destroying the theme, and we're just young idiots at that time. But yeah, that ended up being, that was, despite it not going anywhere, it was still like a really cool weekend shoot. Like, Zach, myself, and Ben like spent ages digging that hole in the middle of Ben's farm.
Yeah, man.
It was definitely a learning process, more so that it was one of our first things outside of uni, so we didn't have like the uni to fall back on. It was that and a film called Waiting for Naval-Based Lily, which is our first short film that kind of got the attention of, I guess loosely festivals, but maybe more local awards, things like that kind of put our names a bit on the map.
Yeah, that was quite disturbing. It was quite a disturbing film, Waiting for Naval-Based Lily. And for all the people that are listening, they go, I want to see that. I'm going to want to see that. And I think probably you can't.
There's anywhere to see it. The early copies exist on. Luckily enough, a lot of our early work happened before YouTube, so we weren't the kind of generation of filmmakers where we were just sticking whatever we did on YouTube and it's there for everyone to see forever.
Yeah.
So a lot of that early work that we might be a little bit embarrassed over, or just was a real training ground for us, only exists on our home shelves and on VHS tapes and things like that now. So only people who need to see it can see it, basically.
Yeah, I don't know how I go with that because like for me, some of those things I'm really proud of them. Like I'm proud of the parts that I played, and I felt that I did a good job. You know, so when I was doing them, I like to show people some of the things that I've done because I feel like I did a good job. You know, when I was doing them, I felt
Oh,
like,
I think we all did it. We all did. I think more so for myself because I was like the tech guy. And I was the cinematographer and the editor on all those projects.
yeah,
I
man.
just had learned so much over the years since. Like, I didn't know what I was doing getting into those films. Really, I knew basic lighting principles and things like that. That was before I did my because I did an honors in cinematography. And before I did that, I was really like, it was guesswork. It was like we didn't have a full on film school training. Like we had a university film school training, so it wasn't like we were going to like
Yeah,
Screen Academy or something now, or an LA University or whatever,
yeah,
whatever
definitely.
film schools there are. It was more like we were self-teaching and self-learning a lot of the way. So it was really figuring it out. I mean, the reference point I remember for Fix was Chopper, and just being like, okay, what did Chopper do? They had colored lights in every room, and just being so like, I was like 18, 19 at the time, and just like,
Yeah.
what do I do there? Just do this sort of stuff. And I wouldn't say it's more embarrassing. It's more just like knowing how far I've come since then. It's more of that. There's the stories and the performance aspects of those films
Yeah.
still super proud of. I mean, that's mostly the actors and Zach's departments, but
Yeah.
I still feel like one of the shorts I made with Zach called a film called Boxing Day was probably one of the best short films I've been a part of in terms of like the content, the performances, and that I always think about that film now that I'm writing and directing. That's inspired what I like to do with performance because I saw Zach work and what he was doing with that, and he was that wasn't he was doing his honors as well, so he was kind of getting his head around a lot more performance based stuff.
Yeah.
And that film, despite being shot on mini DV or being 20 years old, I think it would still stand up today in terms of its themes and what it's trying to say.
Yeah. I think a lot of the stuff that was done back then definitely stands up now, and I think part of the reason that it stands up is such the prolific amount of things that get put on the internet. Some of them have, really, a 4K or, like technology has moved and advanced so far. But I think also back then, you guys had time to think about what you were doing. Like you didn't just, like, you couldn't just go and make it. You had to sit down and think about, and how we gonna. And because of that, I think that's the reason that those things still stand up because you guys thought about what you were doing, and even for young and impetuous or whatever, but you had ideas and you had strong thoughts on what you wanted to make. And I think for you guys, how it appeared to me anyway, like, because I was very much on the periphery of that, but it was like, how do we do it? We have this idea. How do we do it? And again, like you're saying, you didn't go to film schools and you didn't do those kind of things, but sometimes there's something to doing it yourself and finding out what that's like.
Yeah,
Doing it yourself.
I feel like we learned just enough at uni to arm us with how a camera works and how lights work, and the best thing that came out of that was just collaborations and relationships with people, like meeting people like yourself and Steve McCall and Ben and Zach and people we went to uni with who we could work with. And it was that thing of then. You're right. It's that spending the time, because these days you've got an iPhone, you've got some cheap editing software. Back then, I remember outlaying for a copy of, it was Premiere before it was even Premiere Pro, and the cost of it was just like
astronomical,
enormous. Well, especially for a 20-year-old just out of
Yeah.
uni, no job, like still working at Coles type work.
Yeah.
And it was that thing of like, okay, what do we need for the bare minimum? How can we make a film? How is this working? We can't just shoot on a 4K iPhone. We can't just go and cut it on, you know, I guess people have Final Cut Pro, but now it's Premiere, which is just, you can get for like $13 a month now. Like it's like, you could just get it for the period of the film, where back then it was like there was an outlay process to have to get things. And that's basically, after those shorts, we kind of went into a feature film called The Actress, which was the methodology behind all of it. It was like, how do we, so Zach and Steve McCall wrote that. I shot and edited that. And that was, how do we make this? So it became a thing of, all right, well, let's make a deal with the head of our school, our film and TV school, to borrow some gear for 3 months while the school's closed. Nice. And the idea was that we basically went and shot her wedding for her for free. And it was like, cool, with that, we covered for insurance with this gear, knowing that because we were still going back and doing the honors year, so we still were technically students. So it was that thing of going like, okay, you can take this gear out because you're still students. We're signing this away for 3 months to you. It was a camera and a sound kit. We had no lights. We had nothing else. So we were trying to achieve this feature film, which basically we did day by day. Majority of the cast were theatre students or recent graduated theatre students. It was shot in a friend's house who was also a theatre student. She's one of the main actors in it. And it just became this process of like every week or every day almost, Zach and I sitting down and going, well, Zach had a script and being like, okay, I think we should shoot these scenes tomorrow or next time we can meet. Who's available? And just figuring out what actors are available there. And some days our sound guy wasn't even available. So I had memories of like me on camera and Zach holding the boom because there was just no one to record sound for us that day. So there came this thing of like, just how far can we keep going until this stops? And it was just like, can we do this? Can we keep going with it? And there wasn't really a plan. It was planned to the point where like we had a script. They worked really hard on the script. It was a very simple script that you could shoot in one location with a couple of other additional locations surrounding it, but mainly one location with 4 characters, and something you could shoot for basically no money. I mean, I think with the largest expense was like a birthday cake that we paid for in that film. I think the whole thing cost us like under $100 from memory.
Wow.
And yeah, it was that idea of just keep pushing it. And then we got to editing, and it was the same thing of like, we didn't know how to cut a feature film. Like, it was like brand new territory to us. But that film became our film school completely. It became like, what do we need to reshoot? What do we need to pick up? What isn't working in the film? We ended up cutting whole sections of the script out and editing, which we'd never done before in our earlier short films. We just shot whoops to the script and cut to the script. And that really taught us an idea of how to edit a film together and how to make that work in post. And you don't just have to make the film that you've written. And that gave us a better understanding of that stuff. So it really became like making your own film school in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And again, we're kind of back to that idea of being able to learn things that I guess, people do. There are film schools, and there are, like you say, places in LA where you can go and study and learn things, but also trial and error and doing it seems to be a very good way of doing it. Like, look at where you're at, look at where Zach's at, look at where Ben's at. The learning and the amount of learning that comes from just, I don't know, but I'm going to work it out. I'm going to try, it seems to be a good way of going about it,
I think so. And I think creatively you need problems to solve anyway. Like, I think it's that if you're just doing something that you know exactly how to do it, you're not really learning anything. You're not really challenging yourself in a way that's going to give you, I guess, a good end result, because it's easy for you. You can do that.
Yeah,
I feel like when it's
sorry, it's like being on a factory line. It's like this goes with that plugs into there, this goes to that, and it's very formulaic. And probably, I think when people get together and they thrash things out and are not sure and just go, okay, we'll try this or we'll try that, seems to be where kind of a lot of the beauty of film comes out, where it was like, I think if you were to talk to a lot of directors, I think that they would say that there were moments where they weren't sure and they ummed and ahed and they went, well, let's go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that tended to be the thing where people are going, how did you, like, everyone goes, oh, sheer genius, how did you come up with that? And if
Yeah.
you were to talk to them, they go, well, we were kind of sitting there and, well, it seemed like a good idea, and so we just kind of went with it,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
but
It's always mistakes or just happenstance that gets you there.
yeah, and not formulaic, and not, oh, well, I learnt at film school that, you should really have this angle and it should have been that. And so we went with that. And that's what made it so wonderful. It's kind of those things where people are not sure and people are trying things and
Mm-hmm.
exploring. And those kind of things tend to lead us to, and in various different forms of art as well, like with music and with painting and all those sorts of things. It seems to be when you're not sure, it's kind of like I don't know if you'd call it bravery, but
Mm-hmm.
I think bravery,
Stupidity.
yeah, yeah, quite possibly. You might call it stupidity, you might call it bravery, you might call it foolhardiness, but that thing where you're not sure and then I'm going to try, I'm going to try
Yeah.
it, seems to be the place where some kind of magic happens sometimes.
I think it's that thing of like knowing, like I feel like my whole career has been built out of that. Exactly what you're saying is that hoping that you can, someone allows you to do it, and then figuring out how to do it after the fact.
Yeah.
And I feel like that sounds kind of bad, but I feel like it's that thing of also knowing what level you're aiming for. Like I wouldn't have come out of first year uni if I tried to make the film I just made out of first year uni, just on a technical level. I would have failed in the first week. Like, just never would have done it. So it's that thing of like working yourself up through those next steps of going like, okay, what do I want to know how to do next? How can I push myself to get that done? And it's like, for instance, my most recent short Mentis is head to tail visual effects. And I made sure, not knowing that I was going to reach that goal, but in my previous films, I was working more and more and more with visual effects and doing them more and more myself. So it was that thing of when I got to Mentis, it was like, okay, well, I have this grounding now. Now that I'm writing the script, I think I can probably achieve some of this myself, or at least learn how to achieve it myself.
Yeah. And that's really interesting because for those people who haven't seen it, and I'm sure you'll get to the chance to see it in the future, but with Carmentis, there are a lot of special effects that I was actually really interested in from like watching movies sense of how did they do that and how was that, and a lot of stuff would have been added in post, and I'm guessing quite a lot of green screen things were done with that. But so what I hear you saying is that was like the next thing for you, because you've always had a sci-fi bent, right? You've always loved
genre, sci-fi, horror, any kind of like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I remember even being at your house and seeing your video collection, and it was almost like any sci-fi nerd's dream DVD collection was your collection, man. Like it was shelves and shelves of like, the all the greats and all the classics and all the like wonderful sci-fi movies that have been made. And so when I heard that you'd made a sci-fi, I was like, of course, because
always working towards that point.
Yeah. It was like, of course you were going in that direction. But it's great to see that you've been successful at it, and also that you've made something that I think you really, really wanted to make. There's something in that, right? Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I mean, it's like, for me, it's always that thing of, one, I because of the way we kind of came through making films, the thing I've always kind of believed in is like, if you get an opportunity to make something, especially if it's like a film where you've got money or something on the table that someone's given you, or funding of some kind, I want to strive to make the best thing I possibly can. You always want to think of it as like, this could be the last thing I ever make.
Yeah.
So I may not get this opportunity ever again. So I want to make sure and take the time and make sure this is the most polished, best thing I'll ever put my work forward with.
Yeah.
And if I don't get to make anything ever again, that's going to be sad, but at least I won't regret the fact that I didn't give it my all in this one. And especially all my short films, I've tried to do that in. And, previous work, so for my first 10 years, I guess, was like editing and cinematography. And all that work I was putting my all into, but they were never really my films in terms of like ownership, in terms of writing, directing, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I had a feeling of ownership over them, but they were definitely other people's stories that I was telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with this one, my previous two short films, it's that thing of like, cool, well, I get to tell the story now. I get to do this. And Carmentis for me was also a personal story, so it was doing justice to that idea, and hoping that would resonate with other people who have been through similar experiences or been through any kind of grief. Just to fill your listeners in, it's basically to give you a pitch idea of what it is. Follows this guy. He's a miner on an alien planet. He wakes up kind of entombed in his own spacesuit, and through the use of his AI voice in his helmet, he's trying to make his way back to his base camp. He soon discovers that there's no one else on this planet anymore, and the planet's about to freeze over because of a global eclipse. That's the kind of the physical aspect of it. But what the story of the piece is this man kind of coming to terms with the grief of his without spoiling it too much, where his relationship is at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really wonderful from that aspect of so Ant and I had a chat before we started talking about this, but the idea of moving on, right? The idea of moving on, and like you say, getting up, right? And people, when you watch Carmentis, you'll understand what we're talking about here. But the idea of getting up and getting back and moving forward. And I've got to tell you, just as an aside, right? I hate that one where everyone goes, in business meetings and all that. So moving forward, like, what other fucking way is there to move? Like, we're not going back into the past, are we? So where are we going? Of course we're going forward. Man, it's like a pet peeve for me. Like people just say, go.
I guess in this context, it's moving forward in that you're not standing still anymore.
Oh, definitely. Like, I'm not having a shot at you. I'm having a shot at all those business people who say, moving forward, we're going to do this, this, and this. Like, fucking, of course we're moving forward because we're not doing it in the past, are we? So, yeah, when is that going to be? Yeah, in front of us. Yeah, okay. So I get that. Moving forward. Yes, let's move forward. I totally hate that, man. I hear, when I was a teacher in Australia, that was everybody, all the business meetings now, everyone just throws in the moving forward. It's like, instead of looking ahead, which is what people used to say. People used to say, looking ahead, we'll do this, but now it's moving forward. Very, very proactive. But okay, so rant over.
You really hate that term. I got it.
Yeah, I totally do. But yeah, getting back to it.
Forward. Let's move on with.
Well, and actually, in this film, this short film, it's the idea of moving forward. It is actually really the real idea of what those words actually mean, and for this guy, it's really, really important for him to do that. Both, as you said, physically and emotionally, and it's that character has to do both. Otherwise, he's left in a position of giving up, and giving up is, I think you'd agree with me. What you've shown in the film is death, right? Giving up is death, both spiritually or psychologically, or however you want to go define those terms, or it's physical or it's emotional, but it's both, really. Like, for him to give up is going to mean death, and so he's in that position where he has to choose what he'll do. And I think, and now I could be wrong with what you've done with that there, but I think what you've done is that in his when you experience like severe physical trauma, you kind of go into some kind of hibernation. It's like survival mode, right? You've got to survive, And I think it's like for that character, he seems to have gone into the survival mode, which has awakened the survival mode in his spirit as well, in his emotional state. Was that
Yeah,
intentional?
I mean, that's definitely a great reading of it. That was never. I don't think that was initially intended, but I feel like this is the beauty of films to me. This is the way I try and
Yeah,
make my films they're interpretive.
definitely.
They're
Yeah,
great in that way of like films that can create discussions, or that someone, as you just said, it's a beautiful reading of it. I completely agree with you. That was never my intention, but definitely, it's definitely
yeah,
there.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I don't know, definitely, but it's definitely something that I thought about. When we've been talking about it, and so what you've told me about kind of where it came from your story, but also I think it's kind of a truth about human nature is that when everything goes to shit, right, you have to survive, right? So you get into a survival mode. But also, I think when you're in a survival mode, you kind of start questioning what's important as
Yeah.
well, right? You need to kind of throw all the shit out because
Mm-hmm.
like everything, it hasn't been working, right? So you're now in this position, right? So you thought everything was working and now it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that is through whatever events take place, now things aren't working. So you've got to start offloading shit. You've just got to start throwing it away. You just can't carry it because if you carry it, you'll die. So
Mm-hmm.
you start offloading shit, and so you start figuring out what's important. Do I need this? Do I need that? No, boom, throw that. Do I need this?
Yeah.
No, throw that. And I think so that's how I came to that idea of your character when he's thrown all the other shit out about in the early dialogue in the story. He's throwing
Mm-hmm.
out the shit of and kind of interestingly with the AI, I don't need that. I don't need you to do that. Stop saying that. Do this, do that, right? And
Yeah.
so he's
Yeah.
working out what he needs,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that's a great analogy for the underlying story of what's happening with his relationship as well. That
Mm-hmm.
he also does that with his relationship, perhaps subconsciously, but I
Yeah.
think I think that's what people do, you know.
It's a combination of that, and also the whole idea of like, he's pushing away that AI. In that, I always tried to make that AI kind of mirror what his relationship was to his partner, and that
Yeah,
he's constantly pushing it away and pushing at it and being like, I don't want you, I don't need you,
yeah,
and kind of closing himself in a little bit, especially in the early sections, like when he first wakes up. It is that thing of he's definitely stuck physically and emotionally, but he also has closed himself off to everything and has pushed everything else away. But you're right, in that as soon as he overcomes that first step, it is becoming a bit more of a survivalist. What do I
yeah,
need to keep going?
yeah. Fantastic little short film, and
Thanks.
well, it's not just me that thinks that, obviously, because you've got a few awards. Would you like to say the awards that you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of festivals, it was meant with COVID being this year, it was meant to
Yeah,
play Tribeca back in the day, which we were so stoked about, and that was a dream come
yeah,
true to get into Tribeca Film Festival. That was going to be our world premiere, and they were so gracious and so nice about it all. They're one of the nicest festivals I think I've ever had dealings with. Um, Unfortunately, COVID hit America just before we were supposed to screen,
yeah,
so that all
man.
kind of got thrown into chaos.
Oh, look,
Um,
I'm just going to jump in. Man,
yeah,
I felt for you so bad when I saw, like, so for people listening, right? So pre-COVID world, Ants is uh, releasing Carmentis, and it's like he's put a lot of effort into it, and it's a lot of excitement
three
about
to four
doing it.
years of
Yeah,
working on it.
and like here it comes, like here it is. It's coming out, and then COVID, and it's like just like I was supposed to be going to this festival, and I was supposed to be, and it was like everything. Did you just have a big sinking feeling in your gut when that happened? Like I
Yeah,
did. I
absolutely.
had one for you. I was just
I
watching it,
remember.
going, "Oh my god, could this be any friggin' worse?" So I know you, and I know like how much you love films and how much you love making them. And I knew that you were really proud of this thing that you'd made. And because it just like the lead up, here it comes, it's like we're really happy that it's going to be here. And then COVID, I was like, fuck me, could it have not been worse timing? It was just the most hideous thing.
It was pretty. It's funny how many people have said that. It's like there's been so many horrible, serious things happen as a result of COVID, but so many people have said exactly what you said to me, because I think it is that thing of knowing how long I've been working on this one project, and right when it was about to release the world, the worst thing in the world happens.
So anyway, forget what I just said, but get back to
no.
awards and
it's
stuff.
Completely relevant, but it's because basically that derailed a lot of things, and that was that thing of, I remember reading an article, because South by Southwest was the first one to kind of stop. And they stopped. Mm-hmm. They were like a couple of days out, I think, from playing the festival, and they just all of a sudden went, "It's not happening. We're not playing this festival. It's too dangerous." I remember reading an article about this. I think it was a documentary team who had been accepted, and they were putting the finishing touches on their film because they'd been pre-selected for South by, and they were saying they finished their edit, they finished their film the same day the news broke that South by was cancelled. And then they were like, well, no, I think they were finished their film. They were on their lunch break when it happened. I remember. And they came back from lunch break and they were like, well, what do we do? There's no rush anymore. Like, we have no deadline. We have no screening anymore. Like, what's the point of finishing this? Like, it was like, we're still going to finish it, but why are we rushing for a deadline? It became this really weird, like, all our energy so far has been made to make this deadline. It doesn't happen anymore. So for us, it was that thing of Tribeca. They held off as long as they could, because they were just so hopeful that we could still play and all the other films could still play.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. But thankfully, being the beautiful people they are, they've told everyone who, I'm not sure if it's just shorts or features as well, anyone who wants to can play their film, if there's a physical festival this year, can play their film at Tribeca this year, which is so nice. They're putting a little area aside on a schedule to go, these are the films we're meant to play in 2020. And it will be, I think it's one of their anniversaries as well. So it's like their 20th year or something like that. So they're doing a bigger festival, and they're going to have us play there as well, which is amazing. But so getting back to what your question was in terms of awards.
Yeah.
We just played a couple of festivals, I think last weekend, which was the San Jose Film Festival. We also played the Austin Film Festival and the Rhode Island Film Festival, which they have a genre division called Vortex. Okay. So Rhode Island's like a pretty major festival. They're Oscar eligible, but their genre festival is kind of their little side section, which is just as prestigious for genre films, but it's not in the Oscar category. So we ended up picking up best writing at the Rhode Island Festival, which I was amazed at, because a film like this, it's that thing of like, you kind of you kind of hope that you'd look in with like visual effects or editing or something technical, sound design, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because you focus on it so much.
Exactly. Because that's what people look at. They look at it as a science fiction film. I mean, you go to any year's Oscars, it's always the science fiction or fantasy films that get the big noms for visual effects and those kind of things.
Yeah.
But to get a writing win for it, I ended up winning the grand prize for it, which was just, I was a little bit beside myself, because I was just like, that's insane. And then at home, I got nominated for a Guild Writing Award for it as well, which writing for me has always been that thing of like, I enjoy doing it. I find it very hard, but I also quite often lack the confidence to do it. In terms of like, it's your own voice. It's so raw. It's all that sort of stuff. And I've always had great admiration for people who could just write, or seemingly just write. And I've always been a little nervous sharing my scripts to people because of that nerve of putting yourself out there. To have these nods behind it is like, it's been such a confidence boost in that people are responding to the writing and not just the filmmaking.
Did you have a moment where you, like, when you got those awards, where you're like, hey, I can write?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I did. When I got the nomination for the Guild Award first, which they haven't happened yet, so I don't know if I've won or not. And I in my own self-deprecating way, would, say to people, I'm now an Augie-nominated writer and things like that, but in such a insulting way, backhanded way to myself. So it's that I'm very bad at celebrating the wins. I'm much better at putting myself down when I can. So it's that thing, like, trying to be celebratory but not too happy at the same time. I always feel the losses more than I feel the wins, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think actually, I think that's quite Australian. That's quite an Australian way to be.
Tall poppy thing.
Yeah, tall poppy, definitely. But also, I would encourage you to just take it and say, "Hey, man, I can do it. Look, here's the proof. You have the
Yeah,
proof now. You have the proof. So you can. I think you can let that go now, and you can be. You don't need to say I'm nominated or whatever. You've got a writing award,
exactly,
so you can
exactly.
now say, but, people, awards, they don't just happen. They don't just happen.
Well,
People get together
it's
and they
this.
decide whether you're good, right? And people have got
That's it.
together
Yeah,
and have decided that you're good. So, man, grab hold of it. I reckon, grab hold of it
yeah.
and
I got to
go,
celebrate those more.
I can do
It's
it.
that. To be
Yeah.
honest, it's that thing, and I think a lot of creatives suffer from this. It's the whole imposter syndrome thing.
Oh,
It's the
definitely.
whole it's the whole thing of like, oh, am I actually that? I don't know if they're going to take this away from me or whatever. It's that thing of
Oh, definitely.
um, just waiting for people to find out what a fraud you are every step of the way.
Yeah, and it's like, well, because and everybody who does art and any type of art knows that you're only as good as the last one you did, and the next one
Yeah,
can bomb. You know that.
yeah,
Everybody knows it, and so I think it's in some instances or in some sense, the Americans are kind of luckier because they celebrate really big for each other when things
yeah, yeah,
happen, But in Australia, people tend to be more, oh, so you think you're good now, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, so you got that award. Oh, so I suppose you think you're hot shit now, right?
yeah.
And we have that kind of mentality, which is, we've got. I think there's something, and oh god, I'll wash my mouth out in a second. But there is something that we can learn from the Americans there, as well, in that sense. Oh god, it felt like bones coming out of my mouth. But there is. I think about the Americans. I don't really think that it's great that Australia tries to follow America as much as they do. And I'm not a fan of following America in many, many senses. But in that sense, I think that Australia has something to learn from America of celebrating
Yeah,
victories.
they're celebrating the wins, but they're also very good at selling themselves in a way of like that has confidence, and it feels honest as well. It doesn't feel like you're big noting yourself. They can
Yeah,
very honestly just be like, "This is who I am. This is what I've done." It's like it's just honest about it.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's because of that celebration, and the
Hmm.
part of that celebration, I guess that I'm meaning is the part where it's very encouraging. It's, hey,
Hmm. Hmm.
your friends will get behind you and say, hey, look at my friend Ant. Like, look what he's done. It's really awesome, and you should check it out because he's done a really good thing here, and you should look at it. And they are encouraging. It's very
Yeah.
encouraging. And so when they get to that point where they're selling themselves, they're more confident because they've been encouraged. And I
Yeah.
think
Exactly.
Australian culture is really, really, really not very encouraging. It's
Hmm.
very discouraging and very much about, man, you're getting too high there. I need to drag you back down to my level because that makes me feel
Hmm.
better, right? Because you're getting good at what you're doing, and I don't like that. I'm not getting good at what I'm doing, so you get back
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
here with
Yeah.
us losers, right? Stop winning, But I mean, as much as that's a joke, it's actually there's a lot of truth in that.
There is. I have to say though, it's like I've definitely found that with certain things, and it's that thing of like I remember someone saying, or I read something, I can't remember where it was a while back. I heard the saying that if you're an artist or someone who really cares about what you're doing, whatever it is, what are you doing, and you see someone who's getting accolades or success in that thing that you want to be doing, and you feel jealous about it, that's okay. That's fine to feel jealous. It's fine to have a little bit of anger about that through that jealousy, because that
Yeah,
just means you care. You give a shit. You give a shit
yeah,
that you're like, well, I want to be there.
yeah,
But it's like, how do you channel that then? It's like channeling that into, okay, I want to work harder, or I'm not gonna be bitter about it. I'm gonna use that to go, because the natural instinct is to be jealous, be a bit angry, be a bit annoyed that you're not there, that you're not getting that thing. But then it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to build that into something creative rather than just becoming a bitter old man about it and
yeah,
complaining. Because
yeah,
it's that thing of like, if you just keep going, um, you'll never you can't lose. The only way to lose is if you stop. If you keep going, you're gonna win,
Yeah. Yeah.
no matter what. Like you can eventually get a gong or get a Guernsey or whatever.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point on that the idea of jealousy because it is one of those things I think that is pervasive in Australian culture and that we don't deal with it well, and yet I think what it is that people just don't acknowledge it. For me, I have learned. It's taken me a long time to learn it because I was quite jealous back when when we were making films and stuff. I'd be like, oh, how did that get? How did he get that part? And like, why wasn't I in that film? And all those sort of things. And it can be really destructive. But I think what I've learned from then is that if you are jealous, you should just say it. And it seems that once you say it, an incredible weight gets lifted. If I say to you, oh man, you make great movies, I'm so jealous. It's like, yeah, I'm jealous, but I'm telling you that I'm jealous, and I'm actually telling you you're doing something I want to do, and there's a big space now for us to talk about what you're doing and how you're doing really well at it and how I wish I was. And being honest about that jealousy rather than being not saying it and then walking away and going, yeah, fuck him. Like,
Yeah. It breeds that bitterness.
Yeah. So I think in some sense it just seems, for me, it became a very liberating thing to just be able to say, man, I'm really jealous. I'm really jealous of that. You're doing so well. That's so great. And it just became a really liberating thing to acknowledge the jealousy and to be able to, vocalize it. And then it seems once you vocalize it, it seems to be free. It seems to be not a thing
I think
anymore.
it's also a thing, going back to what I was saying before, is that it's like, it doesn't mean you're a bad person if you're feeling that way.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Sometimes you get those feelings and you're like, oh God, I'm a shit person for like not celebrating that person's win or whatever, because I feel a bit jealous of it. But it's not that. It's that you give a shit about your own career as well, or your own path, and that's what you want. You want that. So of course there's going to be a little bit of jealousy there because you're seeing someone else achieve that. It's more how you channel that rather than celebrate that person's win and get yours.
Yeah, and also be in your jealousy is let it be your motivation to, well, how did they get it and why was it them and not me, and why what do they do and how do they do it, and it opens you up to a lot of questions and a lot of questions to see yourself in an honest light, to be able to see your own failings and to also be able to see your own strengths and to see, so what do I do? How do I approach it? And it becomes a space for a really good dialogue, even if it's internal dialogue, where you can find out things, to learn and to grow and to be better. So, jealousy is they say it's a curse. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's also a thing of like, I'm a big believer in authenticity in terms of whatever your voice is. Like, just be what you're trying to, just do what you're trying to say. And it's
you've just hit my absolute number 100% favorite word. Authenticity. When it comes to theatre, so I teach drama here at the school. Anyway, that's that. But the thing, when I look at acting, or when I talk to people, and I talk to directors, or when I talk to actors, or when I try and teach some acting to the kids, the thing that is the most important is authenticity, and to convey authenticity. And I think in life, also authenticity is the number one. Like, so when you said authentic, when I think authentic, I'm totally with you on that. And I really believe that authenticity is the key. It is the key to, even when I was talking to Michelle about playing the harp and about musicians and about art and painting, if you are just playing the notes, to use a musical analogy, you're just playing the notes, and everyone in the audience knows you're just playing the notes. But when you're playing a song about how much you love someone or about how much you hate someone, or if it's authentic and you're performing it from where you wrote it and you wrote it in that sense of authenticity, it rings true. Just to let's take that in a circle here now. I think there's an element of that authenticity in Carmentis that may have been the thing, if people always say, oh, there's that thing, that it had that thing, but maybe that's the thing that brought it to where it is.
Well, I think so, and I think it's that thing of like, for me, authenticity is like, it. Actually, a friend of mine said it to me today because I'm just talking about my career path, and it's taken me 20 years to get here. It's like, people think you can do it like a 5-10 year journey as a filmmaker. From Australia, it's rare to hear about that. You're doing like a 20-30 year journey to become what you want to become.
Of course.
And it is that thing of like, as long as you keep being authentic to what you want to say in your voice and the type of things you like, and don't be ashamed of the type of things you like, whether that's indie dramas or comic book movies or whatever that is, whatever your taste is, as long as you're not ashamed of that and you just do that well and do that to the best of your ability, and it's your honest voice doing that, it's just a process of your abilities kind of catching up as you're learning. And eventually, I believe you'll hit that spot where your voice will be geared with enough ability and training to tell that story that it'll click and people will respond. They'll see that's good storytelling or filmmaking, and that's someone saying what they want to say. It just so happens some people click that earlier, some people click that later. It's just getting those two to align, and then I think that's when people's careers start taking off. Because I think the authentic voice idea is what audiences respond to from an emotional level because they feel it's real. They can feel when people are faking stuff. And it's the whole idea of like, nobody knows anything, which is, the William Goldman thing, which is absolutely true, but it's still like, well, they don't know what audiences want, but I would almost guarantee an audience would respond well to something that's authentic, doesn't matter what it is. It's as long as it's honest and authentic.
Yeah, man, look, I'm 100% with you. And also, I think this is why you got the writing award, because it was something that you knew and you were in touch with, and it was authentic. And even though you were not stranded on a planet waiting for, an eclipse or whatever, the themes,
the emotional arc, the themes,
definitely.
That's why I think a lot of people, especially younger writers, mistake for that whole idea of, they always say write what you know.
Yeah, they do.
But it's like, I think when people say that, it doesn't mean you write about your 9-to-5 job, or you write about the time you got dumped or whatever. It's like you want to take what you know about getting dumped and channel that into a story that everyone can kind of identify with, that's broad enough, that's taking your personal story and making it broad enough to appeal to more people. And the bit that is the thematic, is the emotional arc, is everything else going on there. But you can still stage it on a canvas that's much bigger than anything you've ever experienced in your life to open up more people. But I think people get stuck on the write what you know stuff, and they make these small dramas about personal life things, which can be amazing. I'm not denying it can be amazing, but it's not the only thing that you can still put that on a bigger canvas.
Yeah, and that comes down to the idea of themes, right?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Really fascinating things. And I've got lots of things whizzing around in my brain about all of those things. So I think before you were saying with the write what you know, I think if you and I think with authenticity comes integrity, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you just have integrity about the story that you want to tell, I think, be it even, like you say, like some are really good, right? There's some of those really small ones that seem to be just really specific about very specific things. I think if you tell that story with integrity and you're completely honest about what you went through, it seems that often when you do it, you feel like you're alone. You feel like, everyone's going to laugh at me or think I'm silly or whatever. And it turns out there's like 1 million people out there that were like, man, I totally get what just happened to you, bro. It happened to me too. Or I went through a similar thing, or it wasn't exactly the same, or whatever. But the things that you felt and the things that I feel are in line. They're very
Yeah,
much in line.
completely. And not only that, people read in their own experiences, like what you it's like what you were saying earlier. The way you read the film is like
Yeah,
people my previous film, The Fan, which is such a blank canvas film, deliberately so in terms of like a nameless main character and he's got a name in the film, but we don't really use his name. And the second character being a fan.
yeah,
People read so much of their own lives and previous relationships and current relationships and whatever into that film that I've had some of my best conversations at film festivals has been just discussing what people thought the film was about.
yeah.
It's an amazing thing to be able to make something that a lot of people respond to in different ways. It's not just prescriptive of this is the way you should think about it. It's just whatever you take from it, you take from it.
Yeah. Now, for those people who are watching this podcast and are yet to see The Fan, and you're really going to enjoy this, but The Fan is actually over Antony's left shoulder there.
Yeah, right here.
That's it there. Yeah. And man, I love that. I really, really love that. And I don't know, it's weird, right? So it's weird because I know what happened. I know how it ended. And yet it felt like a really hopeful movie. Is that weird? Am I weird?
The Fan you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, no, I don't think it's weird. I think that's honestly, I think, okay, I don't think it's a spoiler. It's an old enough film so we can spoil it.
We can spoil it.
If anyone wants to see it, by the way, I'm going to plug myself right now. It's available on iTunes to buy if you want to buy it. I think it's worldwide. So,
cool.
Rent. It's like $1 to rent or whatever.
Do you have a link? If you have a link, you can send it to me on.
I think the link is actually just on my. Yeah, I can send you a link. I'll send you a link after this.
And I'll whack it in the comments for this, and so people will be able to get hold of it. Yep.
Awesome. So essentially, the whole film tells a story about a man who develops a relationship
with a fan,
with a pedestal fan. This guy here, that appears to come to life. So it's this living fan, and the whole thing's an allegory for just general relationships. And you can read whatever relationship you want into. In fact, making this, the lead actor Ben Sutton, Tim Watts, who played the fan, and myself making it were the kind of the three creatives on it. We all had different ideas of what the relationship was. To me, it was a romantic relationship. I think to Tim, it was like a dog and a owner relationship.
Yeah.
To Ben, I think it was he. He could probably correct me on this, but I think it was a like a parent-child relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
But it reads that way in all three readings. It reads that way fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many people put their thoughts onto it. But anyway, jumping to what you were saying about the end. It's a super downer negative ending, but it does have a hopeful tone. Because it was the idea behind the end of that was we show the picture of the guy and his fan, Daniel and the fan, at the end. And we deliberately did that because it had such a negative ending. Spoilers, everyone dies. But then to be like, it doesn't matter how horrible a relationship ends, no matter what it is, whether it's a breaking up of a partner, whether it's a parent-child doesn't talk anymore, a dog dying, whatever it is, you've got to remember that there was a reason you were together in the first place. There was some good times there, and there was some maybe not necessarily in a parent-child relationship, depending on what the relationship is, but generally in romantic relationships, there's some good times there. There's some good times going on, and it's important to remember those good times. It's not just about the horribleness that happened right at the end of that relationship, which maybe encompasses 10% of that relationship. So for us, it was important to go back to that image and show that and say, this is what this is about.
Yeah. I really loved it.
Thanks.
Probably one of the things that I noticed, like in contrast to your work and to Zach's work, is that Zach's work's quite bleak. And if I ever get the chance to have him on the show, would like to talk to him about that, about his construction and all that kind of thing in that sense. But I really liked the fan for the, I guess in some sense, the playfulness of that piece and how that came across, with the ping pong and Well, I mean, it's a very, it's a strange, if you to step out of the movie world and into reality, it's like just the most bizarre, weird thing that you could ever think of. But it really worked, and it worked really well in the way that it communicated. I guess the concept of loneliness and the for you and I, like the anthropomorphization of the fan and into, what we recognize as traits, human traits. And I guess at the end, I found it really interesting, right? Because spoiler, right? We've done all the spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's finished, right? And there's the guy, and he's dead because the fan killed him. But the fan, it was like in a moment of passion. Yeah, the fan was like, no, and then
self-defense as well.
Yeah, and then the fan suicides, goes backwards and pulls the plug out,
Unplugs himself.
Yeah, yep. And I felt there was a lot of. I guess you've had this conversation many times, like you say, people have talked to you after festivals and stuff about it, and so you've obviously had this conversation a few times. But for me, it was very much the humanity. There was so much humanity in that film, even though it was an electronic device and a human. Yeah, and so the way that you communicated that was, I think, part of the beauty of that movie.
Thanks.
And really wonderful, yeah.
I have to give credit to that to not only myself, but also to Ben Sutton and Tim Watts as well, who really we rehearsed a lot to make that work. I don't know if you've seen. Do you know Tim?
No, I don't.
He's done this amazing. You should get Tim on this actually. He did this amazing theater show called Alvin Sputnik.
Okay.
Which toured the world several times. It's now franchised off to other people doing it. It's just him with a couple of hand puppets on the stage. And the hand puppet is essentially his hand in a white glove and a styrofoam ball with a light on it. And what he does with these two things through the theater piece, one, it's the most cinematic piece of theater I think I've ever seen, but also it's people are crying, bawling their eyes out by the end of it. And I think it's dialogue free for the most part, but it was so inspiring to what we were trying to do with the fan. It's one of the reasons we wanted Tim to do it. We're like, Tim has to do this, otherwise we can't do it. But it was always that thing of like, I really wanted to work with Tim in some way in that capacity. And essentially the way the fan idea came about was Ben. I used to live with Ben, and Ben approached me with the idea. It was initially his idea, and it was just like, what if a fan was alive and this guy became mates with him? And that was essentially the pitch of the idea. And we sat about it and thought about that, and we were like, well, yeah, but you wouldn't want to be mates with him in winter because it'd be too cool and things like that. It's like we started hitting upon these notes of going like, well, that's basically your honeymoon period, and we started developing this and writing this together. And it was essential for Tim to be part of that as well, and really getting that the creative relationship across the three of us working really, really well.
Yeah. That
we knew how the fan needed to move to get emotions across that Tim could work. And Tim's big learning curve on that one was he's used to doing it to a theater audience, where he knows the direction the puppet's facing. Where when it's shot from a camera, he's never performing something with the back of the fan's head or on a theater production. So a lot of his learning curve was relying on me to telling him if it's reading correctly. Yeah. Because of the angles he's not used to, he's never seen himself puppeteering from those angles before. Yeah. So it was a lot of that, but it was such a beautiful working process between the three of us. And we were all on such the same page as well through the entire process that we knew. To the point where, one of my favorite scenes in the whole film is the dance sequence in the middle of the film. And we were running well out of time, and we had to cut something out of the film. And we were sitting down with our producer and our first AD, and we're trying to figure out what we could do. And they were like, look, we're going to have to cut the dance because it's from a narrative perspective, we can still put the film together and it still is a film. Yeah. And we just get rid of the dance. So we decided to cut the dance out of the film, and to the heartbreak of myself, Ben, and Tim, because we're so passionate about we need this dance in there. And all three of us were like, no one's going to care about this character if we don't have the dance scene. Yeah. That bonds the relationship. It makes the fan what the fan is. Like, that's such a central part, not narratively, but the heart of the film lives in that
Yeah.
scene. And we didn't get to shoot it initially, and then and also I think my DP was like getting on a plane to leave to go to the East Coast for a job the second we wrapped, so we couldn't go overtime either.
Wow.
So we finished and we wrapped. Went outside, had a couple of beers, and then a guy had come in to kind of camera operate. A friend of ours kind of camera operate when our DP left, and he was like, I haven't been working a full day. Why don't we just go in there and do it? Like, why don't we just go in there and do the dance? Like, I can shoot it. It's still lit from the previous scene.
Yeah.
Let's go and shoot it. So we went in there. Me, Tim, Ben, and this guy, who's also named Ben, coincidentally, went in there to start shooting it. And then our lighting guy got wind of it. And it's like, what are you guys doing? It's like, I always want to pick up the scene. It's like, oh, okay. And he started to tweak the lights for us. And we're like, great. So we started the scene. On the first take, other crew members just kind of started wandering in. Even though we'd wrapped with beers in hand, everyone could go home.
Yeah.
Started wandering in. And it just became this dance. We were playing live music live on I think like Fatboy Slim or something on the set.
Yeah.
And then it just became this dance party. And that whole moment in the film is such a beautiful memory because of that, because the whole crew was so into it. And they didn't have to be. They could just leave if they wanted to. If they were wrapped, they were finished.
Yeah.
But just because we decided that we were like, let's just get this done. Nobody else has to be involved. We think this is so essential for the film, that everyone else kind of felt that and was like, oh, we want to be part of this as well. And it was just such a joyful moment. And it took half an hour to shoot that scene, and then we're done, and we went back to drinks.
Yeah.
And it was like, but it was such a great end memory to the whole shoot, having that moment. And that moment wouldn't have been in the film if we hadn't done it. And I think that's why Ben and Tim in that scene seem so joyful and happy, and why it comes across as such an honest performance, because they legitimately are. They get to shoot the scene they really want to shoot, and everyone else behind the camera is really happy as well.
Yeah, so back to that authenticity.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing.
So now everyone has to watch the fans so they know what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like you said, we'll get the link up there so people will be able to watch it. And definitely worth a watch. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I'd seen it before. It's one of those things. It's been around for a while. But,
yeah, that's an older one, so you possibly have. It played a lot of local festivals and the world as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved it. It felt new again when I watched it. Possibly watched it a long time ago, and so might have been busy doing other things in my mind on other things. But yeah, really enjoyed it, and like I said, I strangely felt hopeful, and I don't know why, because people die. It's kind of not really the most hopeful thing, but it did feel hopeful, and it just had that element of beauty to the story, of wonder, I guess, in some senses and I feel really strange saying all those things about a guy dancing with a fan, but it's it had that. It definitely had that air to it of hope, yeah, which I really enjoyed. And to go back to Carmentis, were you trying to get hope into the story of Carmentis?
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, yes and no. Initially, no. Initially, when I first wrote the script, it actually had still had a hopeful ending, but it was a much darker ending, because I was in a darker place.
Okay.
When I was, which is weird because I made the fan when I was going through the experiences I wrote about in Carmentis. Like I was making the fan after the separation of my relationship, long-term relationship, and that was almost like a heyday period, I guess, in that period of that first couple of years where I was kind of on an up, and things were good, and I think I was seeing someone new, and it was just like there was joy in that film, but it also told the story of a relationship gone wrong. But it didn't delve into the emotions of that relationship. But Carmentis did. It delved much more into the emotions of like losing somebody who has been a part of you for 10, 20 years, or someone who had a long-term relationship with, and how that affects you as a person. So the ending for me initially was it ends on a much more obvious he's not getting out of this okay note, where the current ending is more open. Without trying to spoil too much, it's more open to that. We don't know what's going to happen next. But in the first version, which we shot and edited, it was very, very down at the end. And I did that because I was feeling horrible. I was like, there's no hope left in life and it's awful. And I was basically the character. I was going through the same emotional period the character was going through. And it was my editor who was like, I think this is too dark at the end. Like, I think we need to do something to send a message of hope for anyone. I thought about it for a while, and then we try to keep reworking the ending and changing different parts of the ending. And eventually we hit on the ending that we got right now, which I really love, because I feel like one thing I now try and do with my work is, if I'm talking about a theme or talking about something people may have gone through or are going through, is to offer an olive branch or some sort of help or hope or a message that's, there's a way out of this. Or because I remember seeing a film, I'm not going to say any names, but I saw a film with a friend who that person had gone through the experiences in the film that we were watching together. And it was at a film festival, and the filmmaker almost made the film to shock and didn't really offer any solutions or offer any kind of assistance to someone who had been through these events.
Yeah.
And she felt awful afterwards. I remember this person it didn't end up going to like after parties or anything. Ended up just going to the bathroom crying for a while. It was like reliving a traumatic experience for no reason, because the filmmaker wasn't responsible enough to go, hey, and this is what can be done, or even just a notion of a helpline at the end of the film, like something that feels responsible. And that film is what hit it to me, where I was like, oh yes, we actually do have a responsible voice when we're telling stories. And you can tell dark stories, you can tell stories that are lack of hope or whatever it is, but you got to realize, if you're telling those stories, you are responsible for the message it's making people relive. If you're going to tell something with very, very dark themes, there are people who have lived those themes in real life who will be watching your film.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because if you look at No Country for Old Men, he gets away. He gets away. And that's, it's kind of the beauty of that film as well, that they didn't tie it up with a nice bow at the end. And that was and that was a good thing. But I'm with you on the hopeful thing, right? I agree with that, and I like that that's where you're going with your storytelling. There's a plethora of films out there that are feeling, quite hopeless feeling and don't take you. And there's a plethora out there that are happy, feely, those kind of ones that are just there to make you feel emotionally great. But I think it's great to look at those, and getting back to the word that we were talking about before with authenticity, about a more authentic way of resolving those things, of being in those really hard times and just acknowledging that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Who was I talking to? Yeah, I'm not sure. But in one of these podcasts, I was talking to someone about this very same thing. And that was often bad things happen, right? Bad things happen, and they happen, bad things happen to good people. And you can get really caught up in them. You can get really caught up in them. Sometimes they're like small bad things, and sometimes they're big. But for me, I've got this thing that I've kind of developed in my life. I've been through quite a few stages of life where bad things have happened, and I tend to go. I have this kind of idea that what's this going to mean in a year, or what's this going to mean in 5 years? What where do I see myself going? Right, so I kind of have plans about my future, and they often change, and they become can happen overnight sometimes. Like hey, what about that? Do a podcast. Hey, yeah, let's do that. And they can change, and I think that's fine to be able to change and do those kind of things if they're things that mean something to you. But I guess when you're right in that moment of that dark sorrow or problem or whatever's happening, to have that clarity of just taking yourself out of it for a second and saying, in a year or in 6 months or in 3 months, what's that going to look like? Like, and how much meaning will it have? Will it have had for you in that time? And I found that has been incredibly liberating for me. I've had, even here in China, I've had problems with people I work with and situations here, and it just feels like it's immediate. It's like when you have a problem, it feels like it just is now, and there's nothing else going on apart from that thing right now. And yet, if you take a step back and go, well, in 12 months, am I even going to care? Am I even going to care about this? And to be able to offer myself that same idea of, am I going to care about it, becomes, you know what? Probably not. So maybe it ain't that thing that I'm making it. Like the mountains and molehills kind of thing. So I'm all for the hopeful stories.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's a really good way of looking at things. I think I need to adopt more of that myself. Because even like it's like for an hour to the next, like things go wrong, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter at all.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of hit upon what I guess I was wanting to say with car mentors, especially, is that when you're in the thick of it, when you're really in the thick of a horrible time, it doesn't matter what's caused the horrible time, whatever it is. There will be an end, and there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and it will be time to move on eventually. And that could be a year of pain, 2 years of pain, whatever it is, whatever you're going through, there will be eventually an end to that.
Yeah, now that there is a really interesting thing, that you say it could be a year, it could be 2 years. And I think this is how people, I think this is something to do with maturity and surviving. It's like, this bad thing happened to me and I made it through. And I think, so when I say, what's this going to mean in 6 months? I guess that's really come from what you've just said, that idea of, did that or those things before kill me? No. Did I survive? Yes. So I've kind of taken the lesson of that into the future of, well, if I made it through that, what's it going to be like in 12 months? If with this thing now. So because I know that back then I never thought of that. I never thought, what will it be like in 12 months?
Yeah.
And I've just struggled and fought and tried to get through it. And I made it through it, right? So at the other end, so 12 months after that, it wasn't even part of what I was thinking about. So I guess I guess maybe it's a hindsight thing that I've brought into.
It is. It's like all the things that almost everything you've been concerned about in your entire life is irrelevant at the point you're at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like that thing of all the concerns you've lived moment to moment. When it's done, and then right now, it's just what concerns you have right now. All those hundreds of thousands of concerns you've had previously, or worries, or whatever it is, they're now irrelevant. So it is that thing of like, it will pass. What will it be like in a year? What will it be like in 6 months? What will it be like in? And I guess it's scalable on that as well. Of like, if you had some bad news, is it worth? Oh God, it could scale with something like you burnt your dinner or something like that, where it's like, that's not worth worrying about. 2 hours from now, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Or tomorrow, else, you'll order something, whatever it is.
Dinner time
It's not
tomorrow.
a big deal. Don't get worked up about it. It's fine. But then that scales to like, I didn't get a promotion, or I didn't get the job I was going for. And it's like, well, did you still have a job? Great. In 6 months, will you care you didn't get that job? If you've got other jobs you can go for, it's like, it does become that thing of like, you can scale, I guess, that time you're talking about in terms of in X amount of months, years, whatever it is, will it matter?
Yeah. Well, also, in that's another really interesting thing of, the old adage of time heals all wounds. But also, time does tend to put things in perspective and also highlight their insignificance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, yeah, for me personally, the thing of it was that the significance that I'm giving something now is not its significance, and it's not going to be that amount of significance in my life story of
Mm-hmm.
my life, and so, and maybe it's something massive, and it might be something really big, say like when my father died or whatever, that's a big thing, and it's irretrievable, right? It's irreversible. It can't be undone, and it has its effect, but its effect doesn't have to be that effect for the next 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
It has its effect, and there is that effect, but what will that mean in 12 months' time, and how will, and you can look at other people's lives of how people continue. I guarantee I am not the first person whose father's died.
Mm-hmm. Wait,
And
what? You're not?
yeah, what? I'm pretty sure that just about everybody,
I'll do the
unless
research on that.
yeah, unless you die before your parents, it's going to happen to everyone, right? So, also knowing that and bringing that into the conversation as well. But all of those things, actually, it's probably a pretty bad example because there are other things that do affect us in the moment, as much as those do in the
It
moment. But those things linger. And I
it
think
does linger,
everything
and
does seem to linger.
it lingers, but it also, I guess, it has a half life as well, where it diminishes on. I mean, something like losing a loved one, um, especially in that permanent sense, is like obviously going to affect you for the rest of your life in some way or another.
Definitely.
Whether it's missing them or whether it's just the emotional impact. I remember reading somewhere that apparently they figured out that the you equate the time you were with someone or the time you knew somebody who you loved. Um, Once they're gone, it's half of that again is the time it takes to truly get over that, in terms of
Yeah.
truly move on from that. So it's like
Okay.
if you're in a 10-year relationship, it's going to be 5 years to truly get over. And it's not like 5 years of constant heartache. It's 5 years. The first year is going to be super rough, and every year after that, it's going to get a bit easier, bit easier, bit easier. I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I haven't lost a parent, I haven't lost anyone who's been super dear
Yeah.
to me. But I would imagine it would be a similar thing that if you've known your dad for 50 years, for instance,
Mm.
there's going to be a 25-year grieving process there, in terms of
Yeah.
like, it's not going to be an overnight or 10-year thing. It's going to be half the rest of your life to get over that.
I think it
Um,
actually changes. I think, you know, obviously, psychologists and all that will tell you there's stages. Yeah, there's
mhm,
always stages to it, and there are stages. I think the thing that especially with losing a father or losing a parent, is when you're older, you have questions, and
mhm,
you realize that you don't have the capacity to ask that person that question, and
mhm,
yeah, I think that's what happens. And so you go
mhm.
about working out the answers to those questions that you would turn to like an authority figure
Right.
in your life. So, maybe not your father, or, maybe just someone who was like a mentor or whatever, and they die. Uh, I think what the greatest loss ends up being is the unanswered questions.
Right.
And those things are things that you can spend a lot of time on. And those things are the things to not spend a lot of time on,
So it's
believe
more of the
me.
wondering than the emotional grief that you are.
Yeah, I think that's where it ends up. I think that's where it
Mhm.
ends up. I think that's where you end up. So my father died in 2004.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, that's a long time ago. But I think what from then till now has been, it's just, oh man, and just crazy questions too, like how do you do this or how do you do that, and the things that I've learned in my life since then, I know that he knew things about,
Hmm.
and I would,
Hmm.
and I know that he would have been able to say, yeah, you just do this, or if you put that
Hmm.
with that, and you can just do that, and it's like, yeah, and yeah, I know those. So, and also it, again, with that same idea, I've answered a lot of those questions. Yeah, but through learning, in that time, a long period of time, when those questions inevitably kind of get answered, but you're like, I could have just asked my dad. I could have just asked my dad that. He would have known, and I would. Now I'm going to have to spend 3 hours on YouTube and or whatever. But I don't know if you get my meaning, but yeah, those kind of things. Okay, so I have a question for you about for people who are interested in making movies and wanting to make movies. And I think if they've listened to this podcast at all, they'll probably have got a lot of great information, especially about not necessarily having all the education, but actually doing it. But what would your advice be to people who are
in like how to get into it, or
people who are in it or wanting to do it, or I like the things I can think of automatically now already are like just authenticity, right, and about being honest about what you want to do and what you want to make. But also the process, I think, because you've had those 20 years of the struggles and the learning. So
well, I guess that would be the first thing, is be aware of how long it takes and how hard it actually is. Like it's never an overnight success. It's always a hard journey.
Yeah. So on that, just on how hard it is, how hard is it? Like, what do you mean? That what specifically, or not necessarily totally specifically?
For me, it's been like I've had multiple relationships break up, mainly due to the fact that of what I do as a job, because of how hard it is and how little income you bring in sometimes, and you can't do life things. It's a strain. It really is a decision. It's a lifestyle decision. It's a decision to do this as your career, and you're sacrificing a lot of things you could do in regular life. Go out to dinner with friends, being able to afford those kind of things.
Yeah.
Things that you seem small, but they add up. I was even unlucky enough to have a period where I was. I don't want to say I'm homeless, but I was in between houses where I was sleeping on people's couches and stuff like that, where it was just like rents were too high in Perth, and I was in between rentals, and it was just one of those things where it's like the situation works out that suddenly you're living out of a suitcase in your car for a period, and you've got friends nice enough that you can store your furniture and stuff at their houses. That was only a couple of weeks, luckily. But you do get to those points sometimes where that can happen, because
definitely
you don't always have a safety net. You don't always have you're spending so much of your time trying to be an artist or a filmmaker, and I've never not worked a job at the same time, so I'm always been employed, working whatever job it is. But sometimes things just don't add up, and you can't work enough hours to make that meet, or you can't sleep enough hours in the day to keep doing your film stuff, or whatever it is. It's hard. It's just bottom line. It's hard. It's hard for everyone, unless you're born with like $1 million in your back pocket that you can just use to survive on. It's just really tough. And it is that thing of like, it takes up a lot of your mental space being that in that survival mode. So it does also slow down your career. So it's that catch-22 of like, the more you're trying, the slower you actually get sometimes, because you hit these walls. So that's the hard stuff. But it's a friend of mine once said, you basically struggle for 10 or 20 years to kind of have the right to work one of the best jobs in the world. And it is that. It's like, if you want to do this, if this is your creative outlet, and you want, and I'm a big believer that no matter what you're doing, everyone should find their creative outlet, whatever it is, because it's good for your soul, it's good for your emotions, it's good for your learning, just your intelligence, everything else. So if you're lucky enough to have your creative outlet be your career path, then it's worth the struggle. I think it's worth all those horrible times, because you get to do that. And the times, even during the horrible times, the times you get to be on set, you get to be shooting, you get to be in the edit suite, they're just so amazing, and they're so fulfilling in terms of what you want to do. That is definitely worth those struggles. Advice I would give, I would try and figure out, well, one, it's that thing of like, again, being authentic, telling stories about what you know. Most people, I feel like, myself included, especially early on, feel like you don't have a story, you're just a regular person, you don't have anything fantastical or like
Nothing special about me.
You haven't, say again?
Nothing special about me.
Nothing special about me. I haven't come from. I remember, hearing the whole old filmmaker thing of like wishing you'd grown up in a broken home because you have stories. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, geez.
That's all. That's all bullshit. So you wish that in yourself at all. The thing is, every single person has their own unique experiences and their own unique point of view on things. Yeah. Doesn't matter what background you're from. Doesn't matter where you're from. Whatever, you're a person on the planet. You have your own story. You have your own A's to B's to C's to D's. So figure out what the interesting parts of that story were, and they may not be interesting to you, but they're going to be interesting to other people because other people haven't lived that.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out what those are and telling stories about that, telling stories about what has really,
Would you include perspectives and opinions in that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. It's there's only one you, so it's like whatever you. It sounds really like a self-help kind of video, but it's like there only is only one you. So it's like you're completely unique in that because there's a lot about diversity of voices right now going on, which I completely agree with. But diversity of voices for me goes across every gamut of everyone. Like just because you're from one group of people doesn't mean your thoughts and feelings and experiences are identical to someone else who identifies from that same group of people.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea, that idea of diversity of voices, because like you say, the voices actually are diverse, and yet people connect with them. Mm-hmm. People really connect. And I can connect with a story like from Indian cinema or from Italian cinema or whatever, the human condition.
It goes back again, that key word of the day is the authenticity thing. It goes back to that, and it goes back to we're all humans. We all have something in common. It's all that thing of we all live the human experience, no matter how different our human experience is. We all have the same emotional range. It's like it all can tie back to something for each of us that we have in common. So I think it's that thing of like going back to what I was saying with the advice thing is like find what your story is and work on that. Like for instance, I've discovered a lot of my story has to do with relationships and how people interact and how I've either had failed interactions or successful interactions with people in my past. And that's really influenced a lot of my work in terms of, and that's resonated with people because relationships is something that's universal and across the board. It might not be that, it might be something else, but it's like find what your voice is, I guess. And don't think that you don't have a story just because you grew up middle class with no problems, with a happy family and yada, yada, yada. Like you still have a story somewhere.
I think all the people who grew up middle class didn't not have problems. I think everyone has problems. Yeah. But also, like you say, the way that you deal with them and then communicating that in an authentic way and telling your story with your voice. I think that's another really important thing, is to find your voice. Not that I even know how to do that, but I'm saying
it's a process. It's like I feel like every single person that goes to film school or starts off filmmaking, you start off imitating, and you're imitating like Tarantino or Spielberg or Scorsese or someone you admire, and through that process, and I feel like you're imitating on a technical level, and that's when it's the authentic type of filmmaking, when you're doing it as a technical level. And that's great to learn technique and learn what they're doing and why they're doing it and everything else. It's great, it's a great skill set to have and makes you a better filmmaker. But it's when you start stumbling onto what your voice is and what's authentic to you as a person is when it all starts to come alive. And I've had to have other people point out to me what's authentic about my work or what my work is always about. Like the producer I work with right now, she's the one who pointed out to me, like, I have a thematic that runs through my work that I didn't even realize until I was writing Carmentis. And I was like, really? And then I looked back at my work and it's like, oh yeah, they're all kind of about the same theme. They're all about relationships and moving on and grief and all that sort of stuff. What's my point? Yeah. The point is, I've totally lost what I was saying. What were we talking about?
Well, yeah, we were talking about your theme and working through your theme that comes out in your...
that's what I'm saying. It's like you don't need to know straight off the bat what your voice is or
Yeah.
what your
Yeah.
your theme is. You can discover that you will discover that. If you just keep making films, you'll eventually stumble onto something that you realize you have in common with all your work. That's not just a technical or surface level thing.
Yeah, that's a great point because uh, anyone who's listening to this as a beginner or wanting to do it, what Ant's just said, all you have to do is look at the works of great movie makers, Tarantino if you like, or anyone. The themes will jump out at you of
Hmm.
in their work. It if you don't think you have a voice, keep making movies. People will tell you what voice you have because they'll see it, and it will be very, very obvious, and it will
It's
become plain as day. And I think, like you were saying, people say to you, "Do you see there's this theme that you kind of just keep doing?" And maybe you don't see it. And like I remember people saying to me things about me and my life and stuff, and saying, "Do you realize you do this?" And you're like, "No." And then you think about how you've lived your life, and you go, "Yep, that's right
Yeah,
there."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's just
completely.
yeah,
Well, it's interesting. I kind of got reminded of this a couple of years ago when a friend of mine who's a really amazing landscape photographer, and she was just getting into it, and she had just started finding what she wanted to do. Like for years, she hadn't really pursued it, and I had a couple other people that encouraged her to follow this and just try it out, and she started getting a lot of followers on Instagram and Facebook, and people really loving her work, and she really didn't understand why. She was like,
yeah,
I remember having a
right,
conversation with her. She was like, I'm just doing what I think looks good. I'm just doing what, and it's that thing of like, artistically, I feel like if you're true to yourself, you only really see one way of doing it. That's just the way that it's done.
mm,
It just means it's the way you're seeing it. That's what's so unique about you is the way you see it
yeah,
is the correct way to you, and that's the way she was operating. She was like, I don't see what's so special about my work. I'm just doing it the way I think it should be done, and that feels normal to me. I'm not trying to do this amazing stuff, but it's
yeah,
resonating with people, and it's the authenticness of her just being. That's how I think it should be done. That kind of idea
yeah,
that resonates with people, and it's. She didn't get why she was getting popular, and why people were actually resonating with it, and it is that completely that you're not
yeah,
aware of it until it starts happening, and then you're
yeah.
like, oh right, okay, I actually do have a voice.
Yeah, and also people get me, but
Yeah,
not necessarily are the same as me. They just get
yeah.
me, and they like what I like, or
And people
or they're challenged by what I like, or but they interact with me. They have
interact with your ideas,
that conversation. Be it
and I feel like
yeah, go
other people are much better at telling you what you're about than you actually can
yes,
say yourself. You have no idea until because it's just you. You're just being you.
yeah. People are much better at telling you your shit as well.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
People are much better at saying, man, like when you do that, you're kind of an asshole. And you're like, fuck off, I'm
Yep.
not an asshole. And then you go away and you're like, I do
Oh
that.
yeah, I was
Oh
an asshole.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
just
an
do that.
asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a total asshole. I do that shit all the time. Yeah, yeah, it's great, but it's such a wonderful thing about humanity that when people are authentic and they pursue their dreams and their passions, that it's almost like a magnet.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the more people that do it, and you should see what happens when like a couple of people who do that meet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like when two artists meet and the things that go on in their brains and the things that they talk about, become like this, kind of progress their art in great directions because they're two people who are really authentic and then are meeting and then they're talking about what they do and why they do it and all that sort of thing. And the questions that they have for each other and the things that they talk about just end up taking their art to another level.
Yeah,
It
and their ideas start interacting, so it's like they
yeah.
start bouncing off each other and getting new perspectives from each other, and feeds into the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really love doing is talking to artistic people because it's so wonderful what can happen in that space where if you allow that conversation to be there's no boundaries. There's like, you can talk about whatever you want, and you can feel free enough to talk about what you want and what you enjoy and why you enjoy it and what you want to do. It opens that kind of door for a conversation that allows ideas to flourish and grow and, become whatever they become later,
You've pretty much just stated exactly why I love directing. Is that exactly what you're saying? It's like I've always had a problem. I've never understood directors who are the kind of directors that are like, you're doing it that way because I'm the director. That's their response to things.
Oh,
It's like
geez.
they're not up for
Fascist.
collaboration. Where
Fascists.
well, it's that thing of like going like it's like a dictatorship where the thing I love, and if that's where you work, that's where you work. I just don't understand it myself.
Yeah.
But the thing I really love and the thing I get a kick out of making films is that collaboration between working with actors or working with a cinematographer or working with musicians or working with whatever it is. It's exactly what you were just saying. It's those people, those artistic people meeting and their ideas mixing together and new ideas forming, and these brilliant little sparks happen. And it's just through chatting about it, and it's just through, just like-minded people working on a project together, working to solve a problem together. I don't know. It's just that's what I love about filmmaking is that whole collaborative process. Like I even love working with other writers and everything else. It's just like it's the most exciting thing I think I ever do or I will ever do is that process of working with other creative people.
Yeah, I totally get it, and it's kind of like my podcast is kind of like that for me. Is that I get to talk to interesting people who have ideas, and we can talk about whatever and what those things are. And sometimes you find new things and things that you haven't thought of, and yet they can be just crucial things to you, like really, really important things. And from someone just speaking out of left field, do you remember roast nights? I don't think you ever got to roast nights.
I know the concept of roast nights.
Yes.
I don't think I ever went to one, but I know the concept, yeah.
So, when I had the roast nights, that's exactly what they were. They were very, very collaborative gatherings.
No, I did go to a couple of roast nights.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. At your place with the barbecue.
Yeah. So, so my whole point of that was that idea of bringing the people together with wildly different perspectives, wildly different ideas. And the things that ended up being spoken about were things that I would never have brought up or have been able to discuss or know, with just like one other person. But the interjections and the things that people had to say, were fantastic. And that's the thing that I love about the podcast. I wish that I could have like a few people on a podcast and do that, but I've seen it done and it doesn't seem to work so well. So
it's that thing of like people waiting for their turn to talk, and it's more than two people.
Yeah. So probably won't do that. But it's definitely a thing that I think about podcasts is that I really enjoy hearing perspectives and ideas. And I'm sure that when, later when people go back and listen to some of these podcasts, they'll hear all these fascinating things that are things that maybe they've never thought of and have thought, man, that's it, I should do that. Or just like, Antony Webb said, it's a good thing, and it's like you have a power of your voice and you have a power of who you are as a person. And it's not to be underestimated, and your ideas are not to be underestimated either. I think people think, I don't know shit. I'm one of those from time to time,
Absolutely, and I think I said before when I first started filmmaking, I was that person. I was like, I never really felt I had a voice. I never really felt I had anything to say. I was super nervous about writing scripts. I didn't know what to, I didn't know what I wanted to say or how to say it. And it was that process of just getting to do it and doing it more and more and more that you suddenly, just suddenly, it's over a really long period of time, but you start realizing that you do have things to say and you are unique, and everyone has a unique voice. It's like and I think anyone, if you pair that with training and discipline and the technical know-how, anyone could be a great filmmaker. Like it's not It's just about the idea and how you're explaining that idea, more than being a great writer or anything else like that.
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting time at the moment, especially with technology. But like you say, I think it's very important to learn your craft, to
Hmm.
learn your craft. But it's the idea of storytelling is a thousands and thousands of years old thing, you know,
Yeah.
and if you do it well, or I think maybe not necessarily if you do it well, but if you're authentic about how you do it, it can outlive you. It can
Hmm.
go, to places that you will never see, and it will affect people you'll never know.
Hmm.
But storytelling seems to be one of the most important things for human beings.
Hmm. I think so.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
it endures as well. It endures. It's a good story. It's like, I mean, we got stories that are hundreds of thousands years old. Like it's like if you just go back to indigenous stories, it's
oh yeah,
it's just the verbal stories. Like
absolutely,
um
absolutely.
it's something that will endure beyond you, and something that will hopefully help future generations and other people who haven't been through the experiences you've been through yet, who will learn from that and can get through those experiences easier, or it, yeah, it's storytelling is like such a powerful tool.
Yeah, one of the things so recently I've been getting back into Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know if you watched that.
I've never seen it. I've heard really, really good things.
Yeah, it's a kids thing, but the way it's made and the way that the stories are told have some playfulness to them, and there's like one instance where uh, the avatar. It's really hard to explain, so it'd probably take too much time to get right into it. But the main character is very young. He's been asleep for 100 years because he's a kid and he was afraid, so he hid, right? And he hid for
Right.
100 years, and because he's basically the most powerful human being, the most powerful being in that universe. And but he's a kid, so he comes out 100 years later, and there's a lot of stuff he doesn't know, and all these wars have been happening and stuff, and there's this classic line where one tribe is saying, well, have you ever tried, like, because he's mucking around, right? He's mucking
Hmm.
around, and they're all really serious, and he's mucking around, and they say, "Oh, have you ever tried like fighting this tribe with, you know, being a kid and mucking around?" And he's like, "Wouldn't that be fun?" And it's like the whole thing is because he had all that power, like he can do it, and he doesn't fight in the sense of maliciousness. He fights
Hmm.
in the sense of protection, or
Hmm.
to stop someone. And it was just such a, even just for a kid's story, it was like one of those really poignant things, whereas, one of those things you could take into life with you, that
Hmm.
idea of playfulness. And like and because he had the skill and he had the knowledge and the learning and all those sorts of things, he was able to combat evil, I guess, if you like, as a major idea, that he was able to undo it with playfulness, and so it's sort of a sense of
Yeah, 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 yeah.
childlike qualities that I found, revisiting it as an old, it could be, so yeah, the other side of it is I was laying in bed watching it the other night, and I'm thinking, you're over 50 and you're watching a kid's film.
But isn't that what's so great about some of that media? It's like something that can speak to generations of. Yeah, it's made for kids, but it's still
Yeah.
speaking to you now. It's like that's the power of storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we love stories. Humans love stories. We love them. And we love gossip. I
And we
think,
learn through them as well.
yeah, it's like gossip to us is like the ultimate cheap thrill storytelling. It's like
Totally.
the least valuable story you can get, but it gives you a buzz, and it's a story, and I
I
want to
mean,
know that story.
reality TV is basically a gossip story the whole way.
Yeah.
It's the most popular thing right now.
Yeah, that's funny. It's funny you say that because it actually is, and I've never really thought of reality TV as gossip, but
Essentially, it's
it
watching gossip happen in
totally.
real time. It's just relationships. It's like then you watch that episode and you go to work and you talk about the characters you just watched.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
gossip. They're real people, and it's
Yeah, you
what's
gossip
going to happen.
about.
Who's going to sleep with who? It's the whole thing. It's gossip.
Yeah, you gossip about the gossip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. So, my next question is, where to from here for Antony Webb? Where are you going to go? What's
That's a good question. It's that same thing of if every time you finish a project, it's like, what's next? What do you do next? I'm lucky in that I have management in the US.
Yeah.
So they've kind of been helping hold my hand a little bit and helping guide where to from now, and getting commenters out to some people who I probably would never get to speak to otherwise.
Yeah.
The people who can hopefully influence my next projects. So currently I'm kind of, as well as working my day job, which is writing, directing, and editing, for a company in Perth. I've been writing features as well. So I've kind of been spending most of my year nutting out a couple of feature drafts of a couple of different ideas.
Yeah.
One I'm trying to get polished up now to a pretty good state, and then I guess it's that thing of getting it out there. And I'm very new to. I mean, I've made. Not from a directing point of view, but producing, shooting, and editing. I've made low budget features before, but I'm very new to the world of feature financing and getting those projects out there and getting them made. And I think it's a whole different ballgame I'm about to get into. But that's the next thing. Hopefully, is features.
Yeah. Is there going to be an element of bureaucracy to that?
I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there always is. That's why I trust my managers a lot, and they're good. They actually one of them was my friend before they became a manager. So I have a great amount of trust for them, and I'm hoping they help me navigate that world quite a lot, because I know some people get very lost in that. And I've seen friends get mixed up in that and kind of get chewed up and bitten on projects and things like that. So I feel like you do need a very trusted person to hold your hand through that process, and also working with producers who have done it before as well. I definitely want to work with the producer who's been doing my commenters with me.
Yep.
We develop our feature slate together, so I definitely want that element to be there. But we probably were getting on other producers on board as well who have done it before and can kind of help us through that feature film process. It seems like a massive learning curve for anyone who's done it the first time.
Yeah. Are you excited?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I'm really glad I did. Like, a lot of people, they'll make a short and they're desperate to get into a feature film, which I was as well. My whole thing was like, I want to make a feature film before I'm 30 and blah blah blah. I've never seen it happened. In my 30s now, and for me, it's like I'm kind of glad I didn't get to make one, because I would have fucked it up. Like, it's that thing of I am glad I had these stepping stone projects to build me up to a level of confidence that when I get into a feature film, I'm going to be shitting myself, but hopefully I'll be confident enough that I'll be confident in my ideas and not get stepped on, and be able to get what I want to do across. And I wouldn't have had that had I not made 3 or 4 short films before I did this.
Yeah. Really great. That's a really great. That's a great story, Anne. It's a great story, of your tenacity for your art. Yeah. That you've. I think, when I write up for this, I'm going to put tenacious. There'll be tenacious will go next to your name, if you can handle it. Don't tell everyone it's a lie, okay? Please.
I feel like that's going to be in common with a lot of people you've spoken to, surely, in that you just got to keep going at it until it clicks.
Yeah, definitely is an element of tenaciousness for people. A lot of the people that I've spoken to, definitely. But I'm definitely going to throw that in there.
Cool.
And I think, great conversation. I think we'll wrap it up here. And,
thanks for having me.
Oh, man, absolute pleasure. And I really, really appreciate your time and your candour for being so open and honest about what you feel and what you think about things to do with the art world, and especially about your journey, about what you hope to do. And I know sometimes people, especially in the industry, people see things and they go, oh, so he thinks that. I don't know, yeah. It's one of those things. People can be a bit petty about those things, especially people who have a lot of power. But I really appreciate what you've said and your honesty and your authenticity. Let's go with that. Yes,
The word of the
definitely.
day.
Well, the word of the day, but a very, very good word and a very important word.
Yes.
And yeah, definitely been my pleasure and my honor to have you on the show, man. I've really, really appreciated it and enjoyed it. It's been
Thanks, mate.
a great podcast and a very memorable one for me. Definitely.
Good chat.
Yeah, thank you. And catch you around sooner than later, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and
Catch you soon.
I look forward to hearing about the new successes in your life.
Fingers crossed. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ant. Awesome.
Cool. Awesome, mate. Thank you.
Later. See ya.
Bye.